The worst trades the Seattle Mariners can make this offseason. Let's talk about it. In today's video, we're going to be going over some trades that are just absolutely terrible from the Seattle Mariners standpoint to go out and make this offseason. And obviously, some of these are fan trades, as well as some are pretty high up in the MLB world. But we're going to review some of them and just see how bad these are for the Seattle Mariners. I'm sure you guys have seen a few of these before, but I want to digest them a little bit more to really see how bad these would be for the Seattle Mariners to go out and make. So starting off with a trade idea that was posted on Black Friday from MLB.com. And this is basically the Phillies getting Arenado, Helsley, and Emerson Hancock, as well as cash. And the Cardinals are acquiring 3 prospects, 2 from the Phillies, 1 from Seattle, and then the Mariners are acquiring Alec Bohm. So essentially, it's Emerson Hancock and Lazaro Montes for Alec Bohm. Now, initially, this idea does not seem terrible until you really think about it and see the value that Emerson provides for the Mariners, as well as what we know Montes does. Montes is the Seattle Mariners' number 3 prospect, and there are a lot of Mariners fans who are very high on him and think he will be a massive impact bat at the major league level. He's getting a lot of Yordan Alvarez comparisons, but at the end of the day, he is a prospect and we really don't know what he will become at the major league level. But either way, you are giving up a top prospect in Montes. Like I said, he is the number 3 prospect in the Mariners farm system, as well as Emerson Hancock, who actually provides a lot more value than Mariner fans give him credit for. If anyone in the rotation needs to skip a day or gets injured for some reason, like Brian Wu was last year, we know Emerson Hancock is waiting to come up. And yes, while I know he is not the greatest pitcher on the planet, but he does come up and provide value for the Mariners. Every single time there is an injury in the Mariners rotation, it's time to call up Emerson, and he's waiting there ready to go every single time. So in my mind, that is something that is very valuable for the Mariners to have, just in case something happens throughout the season where a pitcher misses a start or gets injured for a longer period of time. This is definitely something that they can rely on, and that is why I think Emerson provides a lot more value than people give him credit for. So it's essentially giving up 2 prospects, one being a top prospect and one guy being a guy you go up and down from AAA to the major league level, but he does have a role that is very beneficial for the Mariners, basically for 2 years of Alec Bohm. So while this definitely isn't the worst trade we're going to go over today, this is still something that I really don't believe the Mariners should really go after unless, they're getting something else in this trade. I don't know what it is, maybe another prospect, whoever, but there needs to be more in this trade for me to really be incentivized to make this deal. So this one's definitely worse than the one we just went over, and this was done, unfortunately, by a former MLB executive as well as current baseball analyst, and that is Jim Bowden. Jim Bowden came up with an article of the 7 trades he'd like to see happen at MLB's winter meetings, and of course, the Seattle Mariners were brought up. Mind you, it is not often the Seattle Mariners are brought up when it is not involving one of their starting pitchers, so you're going to see that as being a very common theme. So as you can tell by the screenshot on your screen, essentially says Orioles get a promising young starter, Bryce Miller, in a trade with the Mariners, and it's basically discussing how if the Orioles can't re-sign Corbin Burns or aren't able to land Max Fried or Roki Sasaki in free agency, all of a sudden starting pitching becomes a necessity for them. So he essentially discusses how the Seattle Mariners should get rid of Bryce Miller in exchange for top prospect, which is the number 1 prospect in the Orioles farm system, and that is Coby Mayo. He hit .293 with 25 home runs and 73 RBIs at 2 minor league levels, but did most of his playing at AAA. And Bowden throws in that he is major league ready and could win Rookie of the Year in 2025. And the one thing that I can't get over is that he is basically saying this would be more painful for the Orioles, because he says, I know it would be painful for the Orioles to trade one of their top prospect bats, but they need a young starting pitcher more. Which is absolutely true. I think the Baltimore Orioles are absolutely stacked in position players, but in order for us to give up Bryce Miller, you're going to have to give us a little bit more than a top prospect. And the reason I say that is not because I don't think Coby Mayo will be a very good player at this level. It is because I believe prospects are prospects until they aren't. And what I mean by that is if they have not performed at the major league level and proved themselves, you are assuming that they're going to be a good MLB player. And by you assuming he's going to be Rookie of the Year in 2025, that is not something that I can sit here and be like, oh yeah, let's make this deal because he has the possibility of being Rookie of the Year. Like I said, Mayo has a lot of upside. He's a 6'5", 230-pound first baseman or third baseman. He can play either or with a lot of power. So, for example, if you're throwing in another MLB-ready player as well as Coby Mayo for Bryce Miller, I might be a little more incentivized, but it's still, at the end of the day, this trade doesn't really make sense, and I don't know why a lot of people try to get rid of a starting pitcher for one top prospect. Every starting pitcher in our rotation has proven themselves at the major league level, so what value does it provide for the Seattle Mariners to get rid of an elite starter in exchange for a possible, future MLB stud? That is a huge risk to take for the Seattle Mariners, and they're going to need a lot more players that are MLB-ready in order for them to trade a starting pitcher. Now, moving into probably my favorite one in this video, and I'm sure a bunch of you guys have seen this. I believe this was from a fan account on the Baltimore Orioles side, but essentially the mock trade was first baseman Ryan Mountcastle in exchange for starting pitcher Bryce Miller. If you're a Mariner fan, which I'm assuming you are if you are watching this video, this is just an absolutely horrendous deal for the Seattle Mariners to make if they were to ever make this. Sure, I'm definitely intrigued by the thought of bringing in Ryan Mountcastle through some kind of trade with the Baltimore Orioles. He has a 139, 111, 108, 114, and 108 WRC plus over those 5 seasons he's played so far, with his best WAR coming in his past 3 seasons with a 1.8, 1.7, and a 1.5. He doesn't hit for tons of power, but has a pretty high average. Last year, year he hit 271, while the year prior he hit 270. So he hits for a pretty high average, not tons of power, but he'll still drive in, 13 to 20 home runs, as well as drive in 60 to 70 RBIs. So yeah, if you told me Ryan Mountcastle would be an everyday first baseman for us, I would not complain. I think he's a very good baseball player, but you are absolutely out of your mind if you think the Mariners are getting rid of a starting pitcher for Ryan Mountcastle straight up. If you are pretty active over on X, Baltimore Orioles fans for some reason don't think Jordan Westburg is worth one of our starting pitchers, which again, Jordan Westburg is a very good player as well. But you're talking about a guy who has one solid year under his belt versus guys who have been showing that they could play. Someone like Logan Gilbert or George Coby or Luis Castillo have proven for years now that they are dominant at this level. So for that not to be worth it for you, then I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, from the Seattle Mariners standpoint, this trade really just makes no sense. Now moving into the last and final piece of this video, and this is something that I had come across the other night. So you're going to see my tweet up on your screen, but this is kind of piecing together what I had seen. So I said I just came across a Seattle Mariners / Chicago Cubs trade idea of Luis Castillo and Andres Munoz for Bellinger and Nico Hoerner straight up. And I also saw another one where Bryce Miller for Bellinger and 2 prospects was a deal that somebody was trying to sway us on. So yes, the idea of the Seattle Mariners bringing in Cody Bellinger and Nico Hoerner somehow is definitely very appealing to me, but I do not believe the Mariners will have to give up Luis Castillo and Andres Munoz to get this done. For starters, I'd definitely be massively surprised if Seattle Mariners were to even touch Andres Munoz in a trade by any means. He is our go-to guy and has been for the past few years. But I do think this person was on the right path what they were going for. I would do Luis Castillo and maybe a top prospect or two in order to get Bellinger and Nico Hoerner. I'll discuss my problem with trading Luis Castillo in a second, but essentially that deal would make perfect sense for me because the Cubs, they don't really need prospects, so maybe you might have to give in a MLB-ready player, Luis Castillo, and a top prospect for them to really be intrigued because like I said in my last video, the Cubs do also have a top farm system in Major League Baseball, so they're not really too intrigued by prospects. But they definitely are intrigued by Luis Castillo, and they are trying to shed some payroll, so by doing this, they definitely would be doing that. So removing the Andres Munoz part of this deal, I do think it can make sense. But now when you get into talking about moving Bryce Miller for Cody Bellinger and 2 prospects, again, the Mariners are not interested in prospects, neither are the Cubs. They both need MLB-ready talent. And sure, there might be a world where Cody Bellinger and Bryce Miller may be part of a trade, and, throwing in Isaac Paredes on the Cubs side, or maybe Nico Hoerner again. There is definitely a possibility there for that to work, but Cody Bellinger and then Bryce Miller for 2 prospects makes absolutely no sense for the Mariners. And the Mariners are definitely not going to want to take on Cody's salary because, as we know, Bryce Miller is not making a ton of money right now. He has not reached his main arbitration years yet, so he's not making a ton, and that is going to be a ton of money for the Seattle Mariners to take on. But to kind of discuss the starting pitching trade conversation, because like I said, everywhere you look, someone is making a mock trade with the Seattle Mariners for one of their starting pitchers. Now, I am very much on the side of not trading these starting pitchers because I think keeping this staff together would be great, but you are at the point where starting pitching has become a lot more valuable, especially with Luis Severino signing for that big of a deal that he just did with the A's. So when a deal like that goes down, and I'm sure there will be a few more starting pitcher deals going down sometime soon, you're going to see the value of our starting pitching really skyrocket. But there's 2 pitchers on the Seattle Mariners rotation that I would be somewhat willing to give up if the trade was right. And I know I'm going to catch some heat for this, but this is just my personal opinion on if they were to get rid of a starter, this is who I would target. In my mind, Logan Gilbert, George Coby, and Bryce Miller are absolutely untouchable. And there's one main reason why I also think Luis Castillo is really untouchable, is that is because obviously besides he is very good, is just his durability aspect. I'd posted a tweet saying that Luis Castillo is tied for 9th in Major League Baseball since 2021 with the most innings pitched over these past 4 seasons. So Luis Castillo is going to go out and give you a solid year, knock on wood for his case, and really be healthy and put together a lot of innings. And I do 100% believe Bryan Woo is on pace to be a top 20 pitcher in Major League Baseball consistently year after year at some point in his career. That being said, Woo's injuries do really concern me, at least from a starting pitching perspective, because he does get hurt a lot in a few different places. So I think getting rid of a starting pitcher in exchange for a guy who has some experience at the Major League level and has a pretty solid track record and as well as a few years of club control is definitely very appealing. Like I said, with the value of the starting pitching market going up, I do believe that they can get a solid haul for someone like Luis Castillo, and that is talking 2 starters, whether that's at second base and third base, first base and third base, whatever the case may be. They have the potential to get 2 legit bats into this lineup with 1 starting pitcher. But again, that opens up another hole in your rotation, so unless they have a backup plan for that, I guess it really doesn't make a lot of sense. But we will see what happens. Like I said, I don't really want to tap into the starting 5 anyway, but we'll see. So please let me know which one of these trades you thought was by far the worst, and I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.